Man, I don't even know where to begin on this. We started doing a podcast in the back of our trailer on the road 3 years ago. The last one, this is how much has changed and how long it's been since we did a podcast. I didn't have any kids the last time we did a podcast.
Now you got two.
I have two. I have two daughters. I have a 2.5-year-old and a 1-year-old. That's insane. Which is also probably part of the reason that we haven't done any of these podcasts. But I remember in the very first one talking about how it was to not try to make things perfect in this. And I mean, we just spent a fair amount of time setting this up. I just got
35 minutes.
It was quite a while, but that's just how we are. I just got this lev rack system. That's what we're sitting at right now. This is actually an 8-foot workbench that has now kind of became my little studio piece, but it's where I work on bows and fishing tackle, whatever it may be, hunting stuff, fishing stuff. And I have the lights that came with it. And I was like, man, this thing just looks cool for lighting. So here we are in the shop doing another one. It will not always be here. Some of you are probably only going to listen to this, so you'll never even see the visual side of it. So it'll sound similar in most places. It won't always look the same. For those of you watching on YouTube, it's not going to always look the same because our life is not always based in the same place. Some of you may not know. I guess I'm Brandon Palaniuk. This is Kyle Vandever. We are, I don't know what we are. I fish, and he films.
Yeah. We've done it for 7 years
Sometimes
now.
I film and sometimes he fishes.
And I have somehow coaxed this guy into paying me, and this is my job.
Is
so
7?
This will be our 8th year.
18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 20. Yeah.
This is our 8th year.
Almost went to 26. Yeah. So we're going into 8 years. Which means you've been filming more than half of my career.
Wow.
Because this will be my 15th season.
That makes us both feel old.
Yeah. So this will be my 15th season fishing professionally. And it'll be your 8th season filming.
I just have to
every tournament.
I have to film 8 more years after you're done fishing to have filmed as many tournaments as you've.
And you still have filmed more than anyone else.
Yeah, it's insane. I've made this verbal claim before, but I am the Rick Clunn of camera guys on tour. So
yeah,
I've got the title right now.
Yeah, because you're the oldest, and I guess maybe somewhat of a legend status in that.
That's a very vague term we've thrown out there. But.
Yeah. So this episode, whatever you want to call it, episode 1, season 2. Whatever. It is kind of the rebirth of this podcast. And we're not going to fill you in on the entire last 2.5 years since we did the last one, because it'll just be way too much to unpack in a short amount of time. We're going to try to keep this one at about an hour. So yeah, I don't even know where to begin because so much has changed in the last 2.5 years. And I guess probably the biggest change being the fact that now I'm a dad, which has obviously changed our life. And I say our life meaning mine, my wife's, yours, because
I'm actually half-time babysitter now too.
Yeah.
Well, I'm Brunkle, but babysitter also.
Yeah, he's Brunkle because he's like my brother, which would make him uncle to my kids. But then also sometimes he acts like he's my kid, so that would make him their brother. So he's Brunkle Kyle.
And we've joked about this before. I was technically your guys' first kid. I was your practice child.
Yes. And you are outside of their dad. You're probably their favorite male figure.
It's
sometimes probably more so than their dad.
It's honestly probably one of my greatest titles so far, to be honest.
My oldest one forever was very shy around males for whatever reason. Like that was just in her personality. It's how she was born. She would come to me, and the only other person she would go to was Kyle. Not even my dad, not even Tiff's dad. The only person, like it was me and it was Kyle. And that's just because you were a familiar face in her world, right? And she just didn't let people in unless she trusted them, and it took a while for her to gain that trust of her. And that's just her personality. The younger one, not so much. I'm pretty sure she was reaching for random people at the RV show today that we were at. So,
isn't it funny to see the different personalities in both the girls too?
Yeah, it's wild. You hear, thing I've learned with parenting is like people tell you all the things about it, and it's like it goes in there and it bounces around and you kind of remember it, but it never really rings true until you have your own children. And then all of those things that people told you, you're like, oh yeah, they were right. And it doesn't matter how similar you raise your children, they are just going to be born with a different personality. However that happens, it's mind-blowing to see how different they are. Our first one was so easy. She would just sleep all night. You just lay her down. She'd just go to sleep for 12 hours. She's still that way. Yeah. Second one, not so much. Not so much. I think we're
Cora
still
kind of
recovering.
Spoiled you guys. Like even when I was in the camper during tournaments, I'd be like, wow, like babies are kind of easy.
Yeah.
Like Kira came along, last year. I mean, I had the easy version because I could kind of like hide from it, but yeah, it's a different ballgame with each the girls.
Just walk around with bags under your eyes. I was having this conversation with someone the other day. I've had this conversation multiple times actually over the last couple of years, because this is a realization that I had, is that when you have kids, it is the greatest proof that the most difficult things in life are also the most rewarding. Right? If you think of like anything in your life that is good, it probably came with some level of sacrifice or some level of heartache or something, right? Like there was some struggle attached to that great thing that came after. And I feel like that's raising kids.
Yeah.
And I really realized it when we had our second one, and we tried to remember all of the things that we did with the first one, and we'd be like, I don't remember. Like neither one of us remember. It was like I don't know if that's by design in our DNA, in our bodies, or just because you were so sleep deprived. We weren't sleep deprived with the first one though, because she slept so good. So, but like the nights that, she would go through a sleep regression or whatever it may be, you would lose the memories of like the hard days, and those would just go away. Yeah. Kids make you realize a lot of things. And I think that was one of the first things that I realized, is that when you go through like all the hard nights and they're screaming, you don't know why they're screaming, you're trying to figure out how to help them. It's like that's in your memory bank somewhere, but it is definitely not the things that stand out. You remember all the good things way more.
Yeah.
I feel like that applies to a lot of things in life. It's like you remember all the good moments. And I would imagine when you're 90 or whatever, that's what your entire life's going to be, right? Yeah. Like you'll remember the heartaches and the hard times, but you'll only remember them, I think, because they're like attached to something that then
was good.
Yeah. You're like, oh, that's why that happened.
Like, I think like what you said is like good things are tough and you earn those things. And that's true with, I believe, kids. I believe that's also true with hunting, with fishing, with winning and losing, and anything you do in any sort of life, like that earning it, the story that gets you to that point where there's an aha moment, like whether that be kids or whatnot. Think of all the hunts you've had. Like some of your favorite hunts might not be successful, but you have those stories that go with it. And you're like, that's your reason. That suffer. Sometimes like that suffer is like, there's beauty in that. And I think like if you can find that when you're going through it, it helps you. Do you feel like that with your second child with Kira? Like you kind of understand, I mean, obviously they're different children, but like there's understandings that you have now that you look at it with a different perspective.
Yeah. I mean, little things like recognizing a different cry where you can recognize that child is totally fine and they're just losing their mind because they're not getting what they want.
Yeah.
And there's a difference. You can tell when it's like a painful cry or they're just upset because they didn't get what they want, or it's like fear, or, they have different levels. It took a while to learn the second one because the first, like Cora, she would kind of whine and she would kind of cry a little bit, but Kira's like got a set of lungs on her. And so even her most mellow toned cries are above her sister's. And so early on, we just thought that she was always in pain, which she had some stomach issues and things early on where, I mean, like the first Christmas, she could not lay down horizontal. So either Tiff or me or like her dad stepped in a bunch, and we were down at their house for Christmas, and you just like someone had to be holding her upright. So you're like sleeping in a chair or the corner of the couch or whatever. That was, we just didn't sleep much for a while.
Lots of learning.
Yeah, lots of learning. But that's when you realize that moms have superpowers.
Amen to that.
You're like, how are you just up all night and then you're just like up all day, and they just like keep going.
Moms are the toughest ones.
Yeah. You don't realize how tough your own mom is when you're, a little heathen when you're young, but then you realize like, moms they're pretty tough in their own way.
Yeah.
Right? It's a different toughness.
Yeah. I want to go back to, you started this off by saying there's a lot of things have changed, but they haven't in some ways, you said. I feel like a lot of things have changed though too. Like one, on the fishing side, you've won an AOI since we've recorded last podcast. You've had 2 daughters.
We were halfway through AOI season.
Yeah.
When we filmed the last one.
Yeah.
I think it was at Lake Fork maybe was the last one.
Yeah.
It was with Douglas, right?
Yeah. I think it was right before. Yeah. Cause me and you and Carl went fishing, and yeah. The whole day. Dude, it's insane because it feels like it's flown by, but then also I feel like in some ways it's like it feels like ages, you know what I mean? But also feels like yesterday. Like I remember like literally going home like after Pickwick and like that rush of everything. And then like that feels like yesterday. But then you look at Cora and she's almost 3 now. She's getting close to, she's 2.5.
Yeah.
2-ish. It's insane to think like how fast that goes.
Yeah.
But what do they say? The days go slow, the years go fast.
It's that drive home from Pickwick was one of the most insane drives of my entire life. Almost where I felt like I was in a daze.
Yeah, me too.
In a daze, but like a hyper-focused daze. It was weird.
Really?
And I've never felt anything like that again.
I've never been that sleep deprived. So like for context, we left Pickwick, and And
I think you need to give more context than this.
You can give the full story, but like we left Pickwick,
which is in East. It's like it's Tennessee. It's
we're in Tennessee.
Central
and
East.
We left
Tennessee.
and we had the decision like, hey, like we're gonna drive back and we can make it. All the signs said yes, we're gonna make it, and we're just gonna punch through 30 something hours straight. That was the plan. Essentially, maybe take a nap on the side of the road.
Yeah, I gotta back up more than that.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah.
My wife was pregnant. She was several days overdue. She was supposed to have the baby before the tournament actually started. And she didn't. She held on. I mean, it was just whenever it was going to happen, it was going to happen. God said, nope, we're going to hold it out. You're going to fish this tournament. I ended up making day 4, making a top 10, finished in the top 10, I weigh in my fish on Sunday, walk off the stage, call my wife and say, hey, how are you feeling? And she says, I'm good. Like nothing feels different. Doctors say like should be good. Like, and I asked her like, should I just fly home? She said, no, I think you should just drive, because the decision of that was after, right? We had our camper, our boat, 2 trucks, everything was down in Tennessee, and you were helping me drive them. Well, then we had a long break, almost a 4-week break after that tournament. And then we were going north. So at some point I was going to have to figure out how to get my equipment back if I flew. So we decided we'll drive. And it was, it's over 30 hours. It's like,
I want to say it's like 34.
Yeah, 34, 35. So we drove. We left Sunday after weigh-in.
Literally straight from weigh-in.
Yeah.
It was insane.
We went back. We
grabbed the camper.
Hooked up to the camper. I think we ate, like shoved our face with some snacks, and then we hit the road and we drove to Memphis.
Yeah, we drove.
Drive to Memphis.
I think we only pushed 8 hours that time, but then I don't even think we slept like a full night.
No, we slept for 5 hours.
Yeah. We
got up and I get a text in the morning. We're already driving. We're already on the road. And I get a text. Things feel different. And I went, oh gosh. And it was like my foot got a little heavier on the gas pedal. And the rate in which things progressed that day was insane.
Yeah.
And that day went from you're going to make it, everything's fine, just get home, to this baby's going to show up, get here if you can. And then it went to, you're probably not going to make it, to you're definitely not going to make it. But we drove, we ended up being 7 hours away when she was born. So
we're just the other side of Big Timber.
Yeah. So I watched my firstborn on FaceTime.
I will say
technology is amazing.
I will say in that whole process, the driving through everything, like, do you remember driving through that massive rainstorm? Like
that's what I mean.
Everything that day was so incredible how it happened. And like, it was not the way that we wanted it to happen. Like we 100% thought we were going to make it. Like when we left Tennessee, I was like, we're going to be home. It's going to be awesome. We're going to drive up to the Big Blue Hospital at home and Brandon's going to see his baby. And like, it literally turned into the movie Due Date where we were just like, there was things happening that were like so out of our control, but like rolled with it. And then I remember when like everything got really crazy and it progressed, and like, I could tell like this was a moment that was heavy for you.
Yeah.
And like, just seeing you like deal with it and be like, that was a powerful moment, because like, obviously you're emotional. Like,
yeah, I had a lot of emotion.
Everything. You wanted to be there more than anything in the world. Yeah. And like, it was one of those things. Like, I remember.
Do you remember? There's so many
much
parts
into
of that.
There's such a story to that. And like,
I almost booked a $20,000 flight to fly whatever, like 9 hours.
I remember
we were like 9 hours away, and I was gonna book a flight. You were calling everybody you knew. I was calling everybody I knew. I was looking up like what pilots were available to fly private.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, my wife's like, "You're not doing that." And the thing is that I would have spent that money, and I still wouldn't have made it.
Yeah.
So it's just crazy how things happen for a reason. And in the course of that, like we had just gotten out of no service land.
Yeah.
Like we had just gotten off the reservation and into what was good service. And like, I don't think that was by coincidence.
No.
Like, because it could have easily happened where I just didn't have service. And then I wouldn't have got to see any of the process, but I got to see the whole birthing process, which was pretty cool. I would have rather been there, but it was amazing that, you know, they had the nurses and stuff holding the phone, and I got to see that whole thing go down. On a lighter note, I will never forget coming out of the gas station in Billings. You know,
this was right after.
This is before.
Okay.
This is before she was born.
Oh yeah, I remember.
And we're like, we had already went through the rainstorm, like everything. This is like full throttle. We're still trying to make it. You know, so there's like still a glimmer of hope. And we fly into the gas station, stop, get the pump started, and like we walk in, and Kyle goes one way, I go another way, and we're just like grabbing whatever we want to eat and get us home. It was like, get us through this home stretch. So I have like trail mix, bottles of water, like maybe a coconut water, and like a coffee. And Kyle walks up and he's got like, I don't know how many different energy drinks. What else do you have? Candy bars?
Dude, I just went straight for that like octane jet fuel. I knew what I was in for, and I knew it wasn't sustainable, but I was not going to fail in this mission.
Yeah.
And I'm not an energy drink guy by no means, but like I legit had like 6 Red Bulls in my hand and like the most unhealthy food, but like something that would just like give me energy, because it was just like, I knew we were pushing through the night.
Yeah.
But I remember like you had the healthy stuff, and like I walked up and I just like had like a handful of Red Bulls and like all this garbage. And you're just like, what are you doing? Hey.
Oh, yeah. To each their own.
Hey, got 2 different methods there.
Yeah. And then shortly after, we pulled over, which we happened to have a great spot that we could pull over, right? It's not like we're on some 2-lane highway I couldn't pull over. There was a wide spot right there. Everything happens. And then it was like, I don't know. There was a moment where we were both really good because you're like riding the high. And then there was a crash.
Oh, you're saying right after we got back on the road?
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
Yeah. Like we were good for a while. And then I remember calling each other and we're like, we have to stop.
Dude, it's that endorphin rush of like, holy cow. Cause dude,
then the dump.
One of the things that was like one of the most memorable of that, like going back just a little bit too, is like, I will forever remember like waiting outside the truck and then you getting out of the truck after that and like us just celebrating. I was like, you're a dad. And like, dude, giving you the biggest hug. And like, it was such a selfishly, it was like such a beautiful moment for me too, to like experience that with you guys, like with you and like seeing you go through this whole process, not only on the drive, but like everything. And then like, it just like was such a beautiful moment, and just like giving you a big hug and be like, dude, my big bro just had a baby. And I'm just like, it was just such a cool, beautiful thing. But like, oh dude, I will say like that next 30 minutes was like, we were both on a high and I was like, we're good. And like, I don't know what gas station we got to, but literally we looked at each other and we're like, I can't drive a second for it. Cause we were both doing like this doze and we'd call each other and be like, yo, you good? And we're like, I'm good. We're just both pushing it. But I remember we slept for like what, 30 minutes?
No, it was 15 minutes.
Yeah. We set a timer for 15 minutes.
I think we had planned on sleeping longer. So it was like fuel up. we drove across the street to an open lot. We parked, climbed in the camper, and you climbed on the couch. I climbed up in our room on the bed. And I remember like laying my head down, falling asleep, feeling like I slept for days, waking up, and I looked at my phone and it had been 15 minutes and I could not go back to sleep.
Yeah.
Like, did not matter what I had. Like, I could not go back to sleep. And then we drove, like 7 hours home.
I remember that was the best 15-minute nap of my life, but like same thing. I woke up and I was just like ready to go.
Yeah, I walked downstairs and you were same way. You're like, let's go.
We're ready to rock and roll. And like that was the only break of a 27-hour drive home. Cause I remember that was our last, like the full push was 27 hours. We took a 15-minute nap.
Yeah.
And like, I just remember like as soon as the light or like the sunrise coming up, we were just like, hey, we're good. Yeah. Like we were pushing through, like we knew where we were in the drive. Yeah. We knew exactly the time. And oh man, that was
and we drove straight to the hospital.
Yeah.
We parked across the street. I walked, or I guess we both walked to the hospital.
Yeah.
Said goodbye at the front door.
Yeah.
And I walked in.
Dude, that was a cool.
Who picked you up?
I drove the truck. You guys
unhooked and went back.
Yeah, unhooked. I took the truck back to I had your guys' truck for like a couple days.
Yeah. And you didn't even nap.
No, I went straight to the beach and I laid on the beach and it was warm and it was like June, I think.
Yeah.
And I just remember I took a nap there and it was like the most glorious day of my life. I was just like, it was like literally the best endorphin rush again. Yeah. And then it was just daytime and warm and nice.
Yeah. It's amazing how much that sunlight will change it.
Oh, dude.
I've done that a lot on long drives. But
yeah, if you can stay up till the morning, you're a changed man. But it's that like 2 to 4 is the sketchy. I remember that drive. Like, I just remember I was like, dude, we have to. I had committed. I had 6 energies in my freaking body, but basically, I was like, I was crashing hard.
Yeah, that was
what a trip. To think of that, like, that's and like. You guys can all see this on the Pickwick video, by the way, too.
Yeah.
At least
it is all filmed.
Which is crazy to think, too.
Yeah.
Like, to think that, and it's a brief bit of it, but like to think like, it's interesting what you have done in your career, too, with documenting your career. Like, think if, like, this is something I was thinking the other day, is like, think if Rick Clunn had documented his career,
oh my gosh,
as much as you have. And I know it's a totally different time, but then, and what the resources he's given to the world, it is insane to think what you're doing. And also not only like for the resources, but like for you to see your girls be born and to grow up, it's really cool. And it's cool for me too. Like I get to see that, which is amazing.
It's probably one of my favorite parts about what we do.
Yeah.
And it's a total accident. You know, that's just a byproduct of it, that it wasn't like, you know, back in 2017 when I finally decided to film full time and then you came on 18. At that time, I never thought, hey, like I'm going to be able to see my kids grow up and have all this video, right? It's like home videos at the highest level. That was never a thought when I thought of filming all these tournaments. It was just, hey, I want to put out higher content than what's currently out there. I want to do it in a way that shows what life on the road really looks like, not just fishing. And when you stepped in the boat for the first time, you had never been on a bass boat.
I was so unprepared.
You were, but you crushed it. Yeah. But it didn't matter to me that that you had never been on a boat, right? Or that you had never seen a fishing tournament. You had the foundational like skill sets to make it work, and you're 10 times better than you were then.
Yeah.
But I see it now, just to like, even when we go back and look at clips, and you're like, holy cow, the girls are already way older than a couple months ago. I'm so thankful that we have that, because I know 20, 30 years from now, that's just going to be that much more impactful. Yeah. And I hope it's the same for them. Yeah. Like, Kira's not going to have as wild of a story because she was born in the off season. So it's not like there was this mad rush. It's crazy how much of those things just happen the way that they're supposed to happen. Yeah. And it kind of, I mean, I only won AOY by 16 points. Yeah. Right. So if she's born a day, 2 days earlier, I don't win AOY. Yeah. Which, whatever. Like, I would choose that any day. I would choose her over winning AOY any day. But the fact that I was able to do both, like, you can't script that up any better. It's just amazing to see how that works out. I think you guys say it in the fishing world a lot, and I think it goes for a lot of life, is like, if it's meant to be, it's meant to be. And like, I think like that goes, like, you can say it when you're in the shitter and it sucks, but like, it's not the best thing you want to hear, but but in reality, like, that is the truth. Like, that Carl had a really good one. Yeah. And he could tell you where it came from. I can't remember where he heard it from, but it was, what is meant to be will not pass you by. Yeah. Right. And so, like, what is meant for you will not pass you by. And it just goes to, like, having faith wherever your faith comes from, right? Whatever higher power or whatever your spiritual, kind of journey is, knowing that there's something that controls the cards and it's not all on you. Dude, it gives you a weird confidence. And weird's the wrong word, but like, it gives you a confidence that it's not like, you're not pressing in your life. Like, cause like, think of the guys, I've thought of this before, as like the guys on tour, the guys that are really trying, and like, that's when it's the hardest, cause you're trying to do everything. Like, you like, one, it's expensive, and like, you're really putting yourself out there, and like, you're pressing, you're doing everything, you're trying to force things. And like, when you're in that moment, it's hard not to try to force things. But like, when you become a veteran and you learn, and you kind of like had enough experience, and this goes with tournaments, this goes with life, where you can go, I know what is meant for me will happen. And you feel it in tournaments, like, you're still trying, but you're not forcing it all the time. And like, and eventually, and sometimes you do in life, sometimes you do force things, but like, I think the cool thing is to see that confidence, that like, that assurity that it will work out for you in the way it's supposed to be. And like, trusting that is like, that's faith. Like, to me, that's faith. It's so much easier when it's going positive. Yeah. But it's there on both ends of it. And for me, it flattens the peaks and the valleys. Mm-hmm. Right. So at like the highest of highs, it evens that curve. Right. So if you just imagine like this curve of ups and downs that your life is, it has to even out those highs. Right. So it's like, you have ownership of that, but not full ownership. And same with the lows, right? Of like, maybe you didn't make the right decision or something, but you're still going to come out of it, right? So it's not just this straight drop to the abyss. It's like, there is a curvature to it. Right? It's not just this not black and straight white. Down. It's not a straight line down, and then you just can't come back up. You can't make the corners. Like, there's this gradual turn, and it's so much easier to see it and say it when it's good. Yeah. It's way harder to recognize it and accept it when it's bad. But I think a lot of people, there's a fine line, right? Is that you're not just like given these cards and have no control, because you're still given the choice, right? Like you still have to make your decisions. And that's how we were designed, is like you still have free will, but you have to know that there's parameters on that, right? Like things will happen in your life that will direct you, and it's almost like multiple choice. It's like you can go, you're like, here's a path, choose it if you will. If you don't, there's another path. And then there's going to be cause and effect and consequences of that path, good or bad. And then it'll split and there'll be another path. And you may loop back around to this other path that you could have just taken as a straight line.
Yeah.
Sometimes you may have to take a left and a right and a couple more rights and then like come back around.
Some of us like that route a little bit more sometimes.
Yeah. You tend to lean that direction.
Hey, I like to discover the map. No, I think but I do think like what you're saying too is really interesting, because like you talk about your AOI year, like things went right. Like Cora wasn't born 2 days before. You caught the big fish at Fork that pushed you over. Like there were so many things that happened that year that went your way. You didn't lose fish. Like I don't remember a single fish. Last year, I felt like it was just like, it's those things you can't control. Like very, very, very little bit of control that you have there, or if any, whatever way you look at it. And like, there was things that it went the other way. And I remember like talking to guys, like boat drivers, I'd be like, there's no way you can, like, there's no way that happens. And it happened.
Yeah.
And like, those are the things, like, it's when it's meant to be, it's meant to be. But that's like the other side of it, where you don't get to say that on stage when you win the tournament. You know what I mean? It's like, it happens when you lose a tournament too. Like, or, when you come in last place, like the weirdest thing will happen. Like, it's interesting to see that like perspective on tournament angling or hunting or anything in the outdoors. Like, cause like that is true in life.
Yeah.
And it's just, and then it goes back to like having that faith of like whatever it is. And I've seen it like from my first year on tour, like you were very confident, but like you've grown from that time to now, like in that quiet confidence. And I think that just comes from experience in life. Yeah. But it's cool to see. And I've seen it in Carl too. Like Carl, from like the last 3 years, I've seen Carl's like the way he conducts himself is insanely different. And like in a way where it's like Carl was a great angler before, but like angling is more mental than it is anything else. And I think when you can control that side of things and you have that faith or whatever it be, it makes you that much more dangerous of an angler and a human. And I think that is a really powerful thing to have.
Yeah. They all go hand in hand.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. But it's, generally there's always an outside source that is, I guess, directing like good years and bad years. Sometimes you don't always see it, but you don't always see it at face value, I guess, all the time. And every guy's got a different story on it. But if you're doing anything at the highest level in that sport or that activity, there's going to be ups and downs. Like nobody just stays on top forever. And if they do, it came with some sacrifice and some heartache.
Yeah.
What
was I listening to the other day? It's like, it talks about everyone that has achieved any sort of like excellence in their life has had to sacrifice at some point. Like and you might not see it, like think of famous sports people, Tom Brady, or people who have made it to the highest stage of that. They've sacrificed things. And like, sometimes that's family and then it comes down to like, what are you willing to sacrifice? And that's like, I think like that comes down to like, just you as a man to just like, I've seen you become an amazing dad and a father and like a husband to Tiff. And like, it is one of those things where it's like, you have committed to being a dad over just being a professional angler. And that like is the best title and decision I think you've made, rather than trying to like think how empty that would be though. Like I don't know, like I don't know it, but like thinking of being the guy, but then like being like, man, like I wasn't there for my daughters, like in the way of just being present. Like that would be,
that's a whole nother podcast. We're not going to have time to get into that, because I've thought about that a lot. Just with my upbringing, now having 2 kids of my own, and how much of a deep dive I've had to do like on myself and my own situation with that. And we'll get into that. I'm open to talk about it, because there might be other people out there that, go through the same things. And I'm not I don't know, like the whole work-life balance thing is there's not a good way to put it. Because it all depends on what you want to achieve. And that balance is going to be different for everybody. If you are in a competitive sport, then there's not going to be a balance. It's going to be off kilter. If you want to be at the top, there's going to be things that falter. And I've fallen guilty to that at times. And then, not to go too deep into it, but I've also faltered the other way, where I have, and I'm not saying this is a bad thing, but I have pushed so far the other way to like wanting to be around my kids, that then I don't accomplish anything else. And then that also creates problems. Right? And it's not good for them or anybody. And so there is a balance there, but I don't think it's always balance in the sense that everyone thinks like, oh, it's 12 hours of this, 12 hours of that. It's not an even split. I guess it's just like life as a whole. It's like ups and downs, and each day is not going to be like, okay, it's portioned out where I've got, 2 hours with my kids in the morning, and then I've got 4 hours. And maybe some people can do that. Our lives don't set up that way.
Have you ever heard of like the burners? Like you have 5 burners in your life, like stovetop burners. Think of it that way. It's like you only have enough propane or gas or whatever for a certain amount of those at a certain level. You can't run all of them on high. You know what I mean? Like, so like that is how I think of like, like I think of life in a lot of ways like that, is like where you have these 5 burners, whatever you want to put them as, whether you're family, friends, faith, career, all those things.
You have to like turn one up, like turn another one
and
down.
You can do it for a short period of time. Like you can, like, I think like realistically, like you can turn a burner up for a short period of time, but like as soon as you do that, it throws everything out of balance too. And not necessarily that there's ever a balance, because I think that always is fluctuating. But like, I think that's the like, whatever it is, the secret sauce is basically trying to balance, to live a balanced life, whatever that is, because it's always moving. Like the girls are going to get older. The career is going to become this, or like time commitments are going to be totally different. And I think like navigating that is a whole nother battle too.
There's other like perspective, right? Probably comes in to that of like having the perspective of what matters in that time frame of your life. And that's going to change as you go. So I think that's probably a big part of it. Do you see, I mean, it's been 2.5 years since we did the last podcast. How much do you feel like you've changed in 2.5 years?
I feel like a totally different person in a lot of ways, and not to get too deep into it either, but I think
we'll get into that another time.
Yeah, there's a whole,
because we're trying to. okay, so I mean, to be honest, we only have so much space on the cards. So like, okay, we're only going to talk because we knew that this would happen. That it's been so long that there was so much to unpack to catch everybody up. And even though we have continued to film videos and stuff throughout all of this, you still don't get to see everything that we're unpacking here. Yeah. So we just like, okay, we only have so much space on the cards. Yeah. We only have so much time on the batteries. We're cutting it off at a little bit over an hour.
Yep.
And then we're done.
Yep.
And then we'll have to dive back into all these other subjects another time. But I do want to know how you see yourself change. Like, what are the things that you've changed?
I think one thing for me that is probably the biggest is I know who I am more.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that comes from knowing who I'm not also. And I also think I know what I want and where I'm going. I would say that's like in a very basic way of like, that's the biggest thing. I think when I started with you, I was like, starting this career, like I think like the biggest thing for me and just filming was like, hey, I wanted freedom. You knew that from the get-go. I was like, hey man, I'll film these, but like, I want to be able to travel and do this and go to Mexico or go to Thailand and Vietnam and what those things. And that was where I think I had a lot of, my excitement in my life from. And I think like, I still have that excitement for that adventurous stuff, but I think I also know like what I want in my life. And it goes back to that sacrifice thing of like, hey, what do you want? And like, what burner are you willing to turn down? Yeah. And I think that's like, to me, has become a huge thing for myself and like just living intentionally as much as I can. And I don't get it right all the time and probably wrong more than most, more than I am right. But, yeah, I think like for me, like it's becoming more intentional with life. Yeah. And I've seen that. I'm very thankful from a lot of the men that I'm around, like you and Carl, and like you guys are very intentional with what you want in life. And I think that's like that's a powerful thing. And I think like anyone watching too and knowing like, dude, it's knowing where you're going is a huge thing. Like, and like, I
think that's big for a lot of people.
Oh yeah.
Right. Is that, people get stuck just working a job for a paycheck.
Yeah.
Not understanding like what actually fulfills them. Oh, just wave your arm.
Oh, does it?
It's motion activated.
We didn't move enough.
I guess I thought like, we'd move around.
The lights
enough.
Just turned off for everybody listening.
Yeah. I thought we'd just move around enough that light would never kick off, but yeah, it's motion activated. Perks.
Nice.
Perks of the lever system. Yeah, I mean, I have seen that in you. I know that there's been some hard times that have spurred that, right? That have kind of created that searching.
But like you said earlier too, it's like you have to like those hard times 50 years from now, I will be thankful for other reasons. Like that wasn't fun, but I know some amazing people that were there for me. Yeah. You know what I mean? And that's something I think like that's the best part of life too. Like,
yeah,
I don't know. I think there's a lot of like,
you want to talk about weird things happening for a reason.
Of course I do. Yeah.
Jake and his wife being out.
Oh, dude, that was
that night.
That's a whole nother story. Boomer.
I know that's a story, but
Boomer.
That is mind blowing to me that they just happen to be at the same place at the same time as you that they're never at. That situation.
Yeah.
Was one of those moments where I was like, whoa.
Yeah. Yeah. They would have never been there. They wouldn't I would have the fact that I found out that Jake was there was I thought I was dreaming. Like I didn't think that was a real moment.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's just weird little things that happen like that. And I think in your life and it just, we're lucky to have those moments and just like to have people there for you. And like, no, man, I think it's for me, I think like one of the things I think the last couple of years have taught me is I'm surrounded by some amazing people.
Yeah.
And that goes for you, Carl, everybody, Boomer, my family. Like, dude, I think that is the greatest blessing in life is to be surrounded by good people that care about you. And I think you choose those people. And that's a beautiful thing. Yeah. I'm lucky for that. Thank for you, man.
Yeah. Likewise.
Yeah.
It's so wild to think about, and I may just end it with this, but to think that we went to high school together. You were a couple years younger than me. We didn't really hang out. We played some of the same sports. And then we never talked for years outside of high school. I randomly just saw you film a wedding video of a mutual friend. Showed it to my wife because I thought it was a really good wedding video. And we weren't married at the time. I was like, oh, that was just a really good shot wedding video. And then the next year, I'm like, I need a camera guy in 2 weeks because I've got a tournament, and all of a sudden I had somebody, and now I don't.
Yeah.
And you're like, yeah, sure.
Yeah. It's crazy.
And then to fast forward how many things we've went through, whether it was you or me in the last 8 years, good and bad, is wild.
It's insane to think where,
because I would never have walked down the halls in high school and been like, that's the dude I'm going to spend the most time with in like my 30s plus.
We would have laughed at it. And like there's a whole, we could go on so many stories with this, but like, remember when we were in Japan in the karaoke bar, and we'll just say karaoke bar, and we were singing Friends in Low Places in karaoke.
We're in Japan, and you're like, I'm only going to sing one song, and it's Garth Brooks' Friends in Low Places. And we're like, there's no way they're going to have it. Like, we're in random karaoke bar, Japan.
They had it.
They pull up the little iPad thing, and it's like, Garth Brooks' Friends in Low Places. So there we were.
I remember us looking at each other, and I don't know if I said it then or if, I know we've talked about it, but I was like, in high school, would you have imagined we would be doing this and we were here for work? Yeah. And like, this was us. Like, this is the life we're living. And like, I would have never guessed this in high school. And we're in Japan singing Friends in Low Places and having the time of our lives with some friends. And oh man, there's so many stories. Yeah. The 8 years have went by fast. That's for sure.
Okay, you're getting short on time, so
I know.
You better ask your questions.
Yeah, for the people, tell the people what is this podcast going to be about? Like, I know we kind of throw it all together, and it's a lot of stuff, but like, what are we going to be touching on in this podcast?
It's a great question. Probably should have done that at the beginning. This to me is all things life, good and bad, that at the end of the day have some reference to the outdoor world. Because I feel like the fishing and the hunting that happens in our lives is a massive part of who we are and what we do. It's the meat that we hunt fuels our bodies and our minds and our souls, and those experiences fuel our souls. And I feel like it's, I don't know exactly where it's going to go, but I have the kind of the vision of like talking about the things that are hard and being more open and real on those things, so that other people that are going through those things that maybe aren't open to talking about them realize that they're not alone. Because generally anybody going through something good or bad, more specifically bad, they feel like they're possibly the only ones going through that. And if there is some instance that we can talk about that give us some light that that we talk about here, or it could be even a funny story that like brings some attention to somebody that they're like, oh wow, it's not just me.
Yeah.
I don't know. Like I just want there to be something come out of it that's positive.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how it is. I don't have a specific direction, specific topic. I have no desire to talk about like controversial.
You don't want to talk about forward-facing sonar?
No.
Oh, I was so
I mean, it will get talked about, but fishing and hunting will get talked about a lot because it is a core part of who we are and what we do. Like I fish for a living. You spend a lot of your time editing and filming fishing content. And every once in a while you show up on a hunt.
Yeah.
And so that's just going to be a part of it. But I don't want it to be just about those. Like, there will be hunting and fishing stories, but there's going to be life lessons that are attached to those hunting and fishing stories. Yeah. I think it's probably the best way to put it is like, it's life lessons that come from the outdoors.
Yeah. Man, you can learn so much from about life from the outdoors. And I think like whether it be hunting, fishing,
and the community, right? The community that surrounds those.
And we all have a passion for it. And I think that's like you can understand that there are like-minded people that go through things that you go through. Because someone who is a successful person in their field still has problems.
Yeah.
And like, I think like bringing those to light and then not just being like a, hey, like poor me, but like, hey, I deal with this too. And I think like that's it's the conversations that me and Carl have when we're just chatting and like one of us is going through something. And like, I think if you can come through as like a brotherhood and like be like, hey, like it's better to have 3 minds going at this than just one wild mind. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think like the encompassing of like what it is, like we have stories from hunts or like hunt, basically.
I want to do, I mean, that's it, right? Is expanding that community.
Yeah.
Using our core group of people, getting them together, having conversations, the conversations that we're already having, but just recording them and, I guess making ourselves vulnerable and putting them out there to the public.
Amen.
And hopefully by doing that, shedding some positive light on other people's situations or, it really just building community for people, making this a community, whatever that turns into. And that's how my brain works. So like, I just start thinking of things as we talk about them, but it's like, a community of people that can lean on each other, that almost like a forum that other people can come and comment on. Like, hey, I'm going through this. Has anyone else dealt with this?
Yeah.
Just like you would post and be like, hey, how do you tie a polymer knot? And someone can explain it to you, but it can be much deeper than that. It could be as simple as that, or it could be...
Shaw Grisby has taught me on YouTube literally 5,000 times, and I still don't know how to do it. Awesome. No, I think one of the things too is like the podcast is special because it's one, you said it's being vulnerable and putting yourself out there about like, hey, what people in the outdoors go through and like the stories and the fun stuff comes with it. But like, I think there's a lot of realness to like the conversations like that we have. And I think like, if it brings the light for somebody out there that like is experiencing in that way, or it can give them a little bit of like, hey, I'm not alone.
Yeah.
That's a win.
For sure.
Like, and I think that's a beautiful thing.
For sure.
You want to wrap this thing up? Tell the people what they can find, and
that's gonna be the end of this one. You're gonna have to save your other questions for the next one.
Yeah.
Whenever that.
It's a really spicy one, so they're gonna have to tune in for the next episode. Really spicy.
Imagine. Okay. Well, I appreciate you helping with this. Appreciate everything that we talked about. There's still so much to unpack. So many stories, so many hunt fish stories.
Yeah. And we'll get some really exciting, fun people on here too.
And a lot of things we've gone through. Yeah. And I mean, this is going to travel with us on the road. So, off season, it'll probably look like this right here in some form or fashion. And then on the road, it might be on a picnic table.
Yeah.
Some rusty old beat up picnic table. But
question is, can we get G-Man on here?
Yeah.
Can you pull a few strings?
Yeah, I'm sure we'll be camped next to him at some point this year.
We're just going to wrangle him into it.
Yeah. We'll just show up with everything at his doorstep, and then we'll just do it in his camper.
Hold it to it. I like it.
Okay. I appreciate you guys listening, watching. For those of you that watched, we will catch you guys on the next one.
Yeah. See you guys. Thank you, dude.
Later.